And hello, everybody, and welcome to this Civic Engagement Roundtable with a number of great community organizations here in Madison. This is the Big Share, so we have our Big Share T-shirt on, and thanks everybody for joining us today during this panel. As you heard in the lead there, this is really an important election coming up. In fact, the New York Times has called it the most important election of the 2023 calendar year. And I was just on a panel yesterday, in fact, in California, with a bunch of people that wanted to know all about what was happening in Wisconsin because they're interested there and everywhere else around the United States. So today we have a bunch of great panelists to talk about the election and also about how to get involved in different ways in your community. We're going to go around. Everybody's going to have a chance to introduce themselves, and then we'll go to a sort of a Q&A format where maybe I'll ask some questions of the panelists, maybe they'll ask questions of each other, and maybe you folks out there will ask us some questions as well via chat on the YouTube channel. So let's start out, and I'll introduce myself. My name is Norman Stockwell. I'm the publisher of the Progressive magazine. We are a 114-year-old national political magazine based right here in Madison, Wisconsin. We're also a proud member of Community Shares of Wisconsin, and we publish a bi-monthly print magazine and then a daily website at progressive.org. We cover a lot of issues, local and national. So we've had coverage of this state Supreme Court race, but we've also had a number of articles about other races in other parts of the country as well. Here on the panel today, we have representatives of the League of Women Voters, the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign, Fair Wisconsin, and the ACLU of Wisconsin. And I'm going to go around the table here, and we'll start with Debra from the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin. If you could introduce yourself, talk about what you folks do, and address some of the questions that you see in relation to this upcoming April 4th election.
Sure. Thank you, Norm. I am Debra Cronmiller. I'm the Executive Director for the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin. The League is a national organization with leagues in all 50 states of the Union. We have made it our mission for 103 years now to defend democracy and empower voters. Here in Wisconsin, that means a lot of education of voters, how to vote, where to vote, when to vote, why to vote, what the important issues that we'll be voting on, what our candidates do once they're elected. These are all critically important parts of knowing and being empowered to be a member of our civic community. So I'll leave it there, and we'll get into the questions in just a few.
Well, tell us just real briefly, the League has been around for a long time. Just talk, if you could, for a second about the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin and where you came from and what you do year-round.
Sure. The League is, like you mentioned, we've been around for 103 years. On an annual basis, I mean, we really are preparing always for the next election, which means bringing voters information about what's on the ballot, what the candidates' opinions are, what their qualifications are. We do that through our Vote 411 guide, which is a nonpartisan, in the candidate's own words, voter guide. We also, at election time, we have observers. So we have the largest observer program in the state of Wisconsin. So we send out nonpartisan observers to ensure that what's happening in early voting and polling place locations throughout an election cycle is exactly what should be happening in statute. And we collect up all these observations from our voters and from our observers, and we create annual reports that we submit then recommendations to the WEC for opportunities that we've seen for improvement. Maybe we've seen some really great best practices, and we would like them to share those practices with other clerks. You know, Wisconsin is a system of a very decentralized voting system, and as a result, we have 1,850 clerks around the state of Wisconsin who are solely responsible to administer the elections in their area. So it takes a lot of work to get all that coordinated, to make sure our poll workers are trained, to make sure we have enough of everything to make voting accessible and safe for everyone in Wisconsin.
Thanks so much. Let's go on to Amanda from the American Civil Liberties Union of Wisconsin, another long and storied organization. Tell us a little bit about what the ACLU does, and in particular, what you're looking at in relation to this upcoming April 4th election.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Amanda Merkwae. I am the advocacy director at the ACLU of Wisconsin, where we are the statewide affiliate. The ACLU of Wisconsin Foundation is a community shares member, where we have both kind of litigation and community engagement and advocacy departments within the affiliate. Foundation works to support civil liberties, including voting rights and free speech and racial justice issues, criminal legal system reform, policing reform, immigrants' rights, indigenous justice, youth rights and equal education, LGBTQIA rights, and other issues kind of tied to democracy through a number of different avenues between community engagement and public education campaigns and know your rights trainings and materials, in addition to working on direct voter contact efforts specific to this election and in past elections, but also advocacy and lobbying on issues specific, thinking about this election to voting rights and expanding access to the ballot. Our specific affiliate was founded in 1930 in response to violations of free speech and in a labor uprising in Kenosha. And so our affiliate is really proud to have spent the last 90 years, specifically in Wisconsin, defending civil liberties and the rights of all Wisconsin residents.
Great, thanks very much. Nick with Fair Wisconsin, a newer organization, but have been around now for many years here in Wisconsin. Tell us a little bit about the origins of Fair Wisconsin and what sort of work you're doing in particular around this upcoming Supreme Court election.
Sure. Thanks so much. Very excited to be here. Like Norman said, my name is Nick. I am the Civic Engagement Coordinator for Fair Wisconsin. And Fair is our state's LGBTQ civil rights organization. We are Wisconsin's affiliate of the National Equality Federation, which is a coalition of state-based organizations working to advance, achieve, and protect LGBTQ equality. So, I mean, as anyone who pays attention to the news these days unfortunately knows, this is a hot topic right now. We're seeing, a lot of folks with very strong feelings, one way or the other, and we're dealing with a lot of, anti-LGBTQ sentiment, specifically anti-trans sentiment in politics these days. So Fair Wisconsin is on the forefront, kind of educating the public, making sure that folks really understand what equality means and why it's so important to a state like Wisconsin. And we do a lot of work on the front of electoral organizing, making sure that folks recognize that elections are a tool to kind of advance, a personal vision of equality and a tool to hold elected officials accountable before they even step foot into office. So as far as the April 4th Supreme Court election goes, like every group, we're paying attention to it because it's super important and the stakes could not be higher. I don't even know where to begin with that one, but every issue that you can possibly think of, every issue that matters to Wisconsinites is somehow related to the decisions that our state Supreme Court will be making. And the fact that, the justice that we elect on April 4th will serve for 10 years just goes to show that the outcome of this election will shape Wisconsin politics for not just, one election cycle, but for a full decade and possibly longer. So we're paying attention. We're doing a lot of work to organize LGBTQ voters and activate our allies as well to make sure we all get out to vote, make our voices heard, and elect folks who believe in equality and believe in democracy.
Okay, thanks very much. And again, as I said at the beginning, I'm with the Progressive Magazine. We are a news magazine, and so we cover this from a journalistic point of view. It's worth noting that this Supreme Court, as Nick just alluded to, really is going to be making some decisions that are very important to the state of Wisconsin in the future. You know, one case that certainly will come before the court is the 1845 or 1849, excuse me, statute prohibiting abortion that's in the Wisconsin law right now, and that'll be brought as a case to the court. Also, the redistricting of the state of Wisconsin, those maps are probably going to be challenged in front of the court, and those maps right now affect us until the next census. But if they were challenged in the court and there was a decision to change something about the way the maps are there, that change could happen much more quickly. I also want to let people know a very important resource, because one of the issues that that people often face here in the state of Wisconsin is it's kind of complex to figure out what do you need to bring with you to the polls, where is your polling place, and so on. And there really is quite a fine website that the state runs called myvote.wi.gov. It's the website of the state, and it will help you find your polling place, who's on the ballot at your particular location, and questions about what you need to bring to the polls, what forms of ID are acceptable, how do you register if you're not registered, and so on. So very important information there. And I know that our other organizations all have information on their websites as well. So when we next go around, if everyone could give your contact information for your organization and the website, if you have a e-newsletter, phone number, whatever. Our organization, the Progressive Magazine, again, our website is progressive.org. Lots of news stories on lots of topics, including this state Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. I want to go around now and ask each of you to talk about the lead up to the primary. We had a primary that just occurred on February 21st. It narrowed the field from 4 candidates down to 2. But in the time leading up to the primary, a couple of questions. What sort of collaboration were you involved with other organizations, either those on this call or others around the state? And what do you think the voters have learned so far, and what do voters still need to be learning between now and April 4th? So let's go around in the same order again, and start out with the League of Women Voters.
Sure, thank you, Norm. I think there was a lot of preparation and a lot of collaboration that went into other work in the months ahead of the primary. We had a lot of education that needed to get out into the field so that people knew who these primary candidates were, what a Supreme Court does, and what kind of cases are going to come before that Supreme Court. So there was a lot of information that was coming into the market. In Wisconsin, we have a coalition of voting rights organizations that works together regularly to plan messages. What are the important messages? How are we going to message, in one voice? And we think a lot of the work that we were doing together in preparation for February resulted in a couple of very tangible and very good things for Wisconsin. Spring primaries, though they are critically important, in a spring nonpartisan primary, we elect our critical city and county officials. We elect the members of our judiciary. And these are the folks who make decisions about our lives every single day in their public work. And yet in spring primaries, we oftentimes see the lowest turnout of voters that we have in any elections. And, you know, when you're mayor, when you're alderman, when you're county supervisor, when your municipal judge is going to be on the ballot, you have a stake in the game, because those are the decisions that are important to you as a member of your community, your neighborhood, your city, your county, your state. And so we tried to bring that message home, that these are elected officials that do impact your life. And I think with so many players having the same message in the marketplace, we really were successful in taking a typically 8% voter turnout for a February primary, you know, a spring primary, to nearly 30% turnout. Still not fabulous, let me tell you, I'm not satisfied, but I sure like that number a lot better than under 10%. And we're continuing to do that same kind of messaging coming into April. And I think that coordination, that working together, that commitment to building people's awareness about the importance of primary elections in the state of Wisconsin, what's on the ballot and what those elected officials will do, was very important in bringing out that vote.
And real quick again for people, tell them how to get connected to League of Women Voters, your website, and so on.
The League of Women Voters web is lwvwi.org. You will find a great amount of information about us as an organization, but we also have a number of resources at in our navigation bar on the left-hand side of our homepage. At the bottom of that bar, there's a section called Toolkits and Resources, and you will find every campaign that we run, every piece of information you need to be a voter. There's a whole toolkit on the spring elections, and all the information that you'll need to link to Vote 411, to My Vote Wisconsin, to our partner agencies. You'll find a lot of really usable information on that website.
Great, thank you very much. And I want to bring in Cely Flores of the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign, who has just joined us as well. And I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about the Democracy Campaign, the work that you do, and what you've done so far in relation to this upcoming state Supreme Court election. And then also give people the contact information to get access to the wonderful information that you have up on your website.
Thanks, Norman. Thank you all so much for the invitation. I am the Racial Equity and Economic Justice Advocate for the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan watchdog group that's been dedicated to clean government since 1995. We track money in politics in a unique public database. Prior to the internet, if you wanted access to contributions, to campaign contributions, to any political spending, regardless of the political party, you had to come to the Capitol, you had to ask for this paperwork, and they'd hand you a box, and you'd have to, you'd scavenge through that box for campaign contributions. And as we see the campaign funding increase in certain just spending wise, we thought it was important to create a public database where everybody has access to some of the largest and even the smallest contributors to our democracy. Again, we write about issues of money and politics on our website, and we advocate for just campaign finance reform and other policies that will make just a real change in our democracy. We're part of many coalitions, which include the Wisconsin Fair Maps Coalition, the Wisconsin United to Amend, and the Wisconsin Voting Rights Coalition, where Debra is also a part of. And we're a small team. We're a small team of 7 and sometimes 6, soon to be 6. We generate articles to bring people's awareness, and we do it in a way where it's a digestible content. We don't want to over saturate people's, ability to understand something or terms. So we make sure that we let the public know what's going on in clean, writing. Let everybody know that as of Wednesday morning, the Supreme Court race topped a $5.6 million expenditure, right? And that's a lot of money. So we let the community know what's going on. We want to make sure that it's as accessible as possible to everybody, and we do it in coalition with other groups.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Again, I'm going to break for a second to remind people that this program is part of the Big Share, which is sponsored by Community Shares of Wisconsin, an annual fundraising event for more than 70 nonprofits here in the Madison area. And all of us are among those members, so we appreciate all of your support. You can go online to bigshare.org and you can see this program, and you can also make a donation to support one or many of the members of Community Shares of Wisconsin. We're also streaming live on YouTube, and you can go to the YouTube channel at youtube.com. I think it's /community shares. I apologize. I don't have that in front of me. And you can see the program that we're doing right now, and you can share it with your friends as well. Let me go back now to our panel, and Amanda from the American Civil Liberties Union of Wisconsin. Our question was, what did you do in collaboration with other organizations so far leading up to the primary of February of this year, and also what are you doing moving forward? And then finally, contact info so people can get in touch with you and get resources from the ACLU.
Absolutely. So something that we are also a participant in the Wisconsin Voting Rights Coalition, and I think it's wonderful to have a centralized group to have that one message and make sure that everyone is distributing the most up-to-date, accurate, know your rights information and information about basic election information, but also some C3 candidate guide information. I think it's great to have a coalition that can have some kind of niche know your rights information. For example, disability rights is always the go-to for making sure that voters with disabilities know how to, for example, have assistance in returning ballots in light of so many changing rules at the statewide level, with so much litigation over the last several years surrounding voting rights. One thing that the ACLU always keeps up to date, and I know it's something that's used by coalition members, is our Know Your Rights information on folks who have criminal convictions, and making sure that folks know when they are still eligible to vote, even though it might not be something that people always realize. For example, jail voting, and our work on the jail voting coalition that involves a lot of other members from the Wisconsin Voting Rights Coalition, really working to inform folks who are incarcerated and those who love them and know them, that pre-conviction, if someone is incarcerated, they still retain the right to vote. So all of our Know Your Rights information specific to this election can be found on our website at aclu-wi.org, and then there's a link kind of that leads you to a landing page with all of our election and voting rights information. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We also partner with Voting Rights Coalition members on election protection work in each election cycle. We run a Twitter and a Facebook page specific to election protection, where folks can ask any questions that they have, and we share kind of updated information when there are changes locally or statewide in voting procedures. And those are also linked on ACLU's social media pages.
Okay, thank you very much. And going to Nick from Fair Wisconsin, again, talk about collaboration, talk about what you've done so far around the primary and moving forward, and how people can get in touch.
Yeah, so I'm really glad you asked this question because I think that nonprofits, social justice focused organizations like us that do nonpartisan work are in a really unique position when it comes to voter education. Because a lot of that has to do with the messenger, right? We are living in very partisan, hyper political times, and a lot of voters, especially after, the crazy 2022 election cycle, are honestly exhausted. They're burnt out. They're tired from this constant barrage of information and television ads and everything that pops up on their computers and on social media about politics. So I kind of see, nonprofits like Fair Wisconsin as a way to carry that message, carry a nonpartisan message, specifically as it relates to voter education, um, effectively to a lot of these folks who feel, cast aside and feel disaffected by the system. So, in the context of the spring primary, Fair Wisconsin did a lot of work to get the word out to our community, our members, about the importance of the election. Um, and we are always cognizant of the fact that you have to, reach folks through different ways, right? You have to meet them where they're at. It's not just door knocking, it's not just phone banking, it's all of the above, right? It's taking to social media and using all online platforms. It's showing up at community events, tabling, talking to people, joining student campus organizations for their chapter meetings. We do that quite a bit with LGBTQ campus organizations on college campuses all across the state. And just getting that word out, especially in an election that is as low turnout as some of these, even if we're anticipating, like Debra said, a higher than normal turnout for a spring election, can make a real difference. So Fair Wisconsin is, showing up, trying to talk to as many voters as possible, and using our kind of privilege as a nonpartisan organization to get the word out, to be that trusted messenger that, burnt out folks are looking for right now, especially in what is a nonpartisan race. And I will also add that Fair Wisconsin has a really awesome voting page on our website. If you go to fairwisconsin.com/vote, we have our PAC committees endorse candidates, but that's separate from this call. But we do have a lot of voter resources, one of which is a Voting While Trans guide, because the transgender community faces a lot of unique obstacles when it comes to accessing the ballot box and having their updated identity documents. So check out that website, fairwisconsin.com/vote, to learn more about, the electoral influence of the LGBTQ community and the work we're doing to really get out the vote here in Wisconsin.
Okay, thank you very much. And for those who are keeping score, that's fairwisconsin.com, but the rest of us are all .org on our websites. We have the League of Women Voters at LWVWI, which is League of Women Voters of Wisconsin. We have the ACLU at ACLU- WI.org, and they are the American Civil Liberties Union of Wisconsin. We have the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign at WISDC, as in Wisconsin Democracy.org. And then again, my home is progressive.org, the Progressive Magazine. Let's go around now for another round, and particularly talking about the courts. Why do courts matter in a democracy? And specifically in relation to this upcoming judicial election, talk a little bit about why this state Supreme Court election matters to you and your organization and the people that you both represent and work with. We'll start with League of Women Voters.
Thank you so much. I think it's really important that when we think about the courts, we automatically think about the courts' role in our democracy. The court is the third branch of government, intended not to be the political branch. Our legislature and executive branches, we know, are political. Candidates call themselves partisans, they run as partisans. But the third branch of government is the check and balance branch. This is the branch of government that is supposed to be the interpreters of our laws, the upholder of our constitutional rights. And so it's really critically important that we as citizens in our democracy hold our courts to that high standard. And that's one thing that I think is really important as we come into this very high profile Supreme Court race, where we've seen a lot of what is judicial ideology making the front page of the newspaper, when in fact, what should be making the front page of the newspaper is the qualifications of the justices that we will be electing. And are they justices that have a strong preference for constitutional interpretation? Are they more interpreting of statutory or respectful of precedent? Do they, favor or not favor taking cases at their level of the court system as original jurisdiction? There's so much that we can be asking ourselves about what the justices will do once they're elected, and kind of understanding what their purpose is, I think really helps root our decisions in electing anyone in the judiciary, whether that's a municipal court judge or whether that's a Supreme Court judge of the United States. I really think that this intentionality of trying to cause ideology to be pushed upon our Supreme Court in the media and in some, even just in conversations you have with your brothers and your sisters and your friends, I'm hopeful that some of our organizations can be those organizations that are trying to bring us back to the center. And the center is our courts are neutral. Their role isn't partisan. Their role is, in fact, having everything to do with holding our partisan branches of government accountable. And that's what we should be talking about, is how do we elect a judiciary that does that best for the citizens in Wisconsin?
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go next to the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign, and the question about why do courts matter in a democracy, but also I'm going to add one more layer, because you folks really look at finance in campaign finance, and there's been so much money coming into this race. So talk about that as well. Why does money matter in this electoral process? You're muted still.
Of course. Right. So the goal of the courts as a nonpartisan, play in our democracy is that they shouldn't be taking money, left and right from red, blue, purple, pink, any party, right? The whole goal is to create a safe environment for not just the voters in Wisconsin, but even undocumented people in Wisconsin. There are a lot of state Supreme Courts in different states that have shut down driver's licenses for undocumented people, whereas that is not just a public service issue, it's a public health issue when you're driving without a license. And we had driver's licenses for undocumented people up until Act 10 in early 2011. And so for courts to get involved to protect the well-being and health of communities is something that shouldn't have to be shouldn't have to be a decision that a conservative or like a liberal would make. It should just be the safety of the community that live here. And just the money that would be generated, right, if people just had access to get to work, people had safe access to. But aside from just some of the just more public health issues, in terms of like special interests just setting just record high in spending, this hadn't happened before. It wasn't up until 2009 where people PACs started pushing just millions into ads, into advertising, in just overall the general well-being or financial health of political parties. some of the, some of our what we track is we realize how much of this money comes from larger group spending, and some of it is also out of state group spending, which is a big problem, I would say, in the state of Wisconsin, because we want to make sure that the courts and their decisions are based out of the state of Wisconsin for the people in Wisconsin. We do have a hijacking campaign that you can find on our website. It's just called Hijacking Campaign 2023, where we have tracked independent expenditures as well as issue ads. You can kind of see it straight down the middle, and you can see just the list of all of our updates on how, who, what, and where PACs and different corporations have been funneling funding into the Supreme Court election. The most recent one was an expenditure report by the Tech for Campaigns for the Wisconsin Supreme Court election, and they're just outside groups that are electioneering and just affecting our the race, and in both the negative or the positive outlook. So we look forward to continue to track the expenditures. We look forward to continue to make this accessible to the community so they can see, and they can definitely know who to point their finger at when we have all of these people and outside groups just funneling money into these campaigns.
Thank you very much. And the ACLU works with the courts a lot. So why do courts matter in a democracy, and in particular in this state Supreme Court race? Why is this court so important as you folks see it?
Well, I think about so in a prior life, I used to be a middle school social studies teacher, and I think about how I would teach 8th grade civics, in talking about the three branches, and in theory how checks and balances should work at both the state level and the federal level. It's been wild to observe how when we look at the way that our electoral maps are profoundly gerrymandered, and when we look at the kind of trend of the state Supreme Court in kind of consolidating power with the legislature, and how we have continued fights between legislative and executive authority that can have a profound impact on just the basic functioning of government. I think that's one thing that is currently at issue in this election, is just how each of the branches of government relate to one another, and do those checks and balances actually exist in the way that we teach young people in 8th grade civics class how they are supposed to function. So that is one thing, and I think the courts, specifically the Supreme Court, is kind of the state constitutional backstop. When we think about issues that are near and dear to the ACLU of Wisconsin, like voting rights and freedom of speech and association, the interpretations of our state Supreme Court justices of how those rights and what are the scope of those rights within the state under our state constitution, those free speech and voting rights are kind of those critical rights that can impact and are like the key to all of these other rights that folks hold. And so looking at the court's role in just access to democracy has such a profound impact on Wisconsinites' ability to engage in kind of the civics process at both the state level and the local level on whatever issues they are passionate about, whatever issues they are directly impacted by. So profound implications for kind of how organizations are able to ensure that the most marginalized communities' rights are protected, both when we're looking at individual rights of immigrant communities, rights of LGBTQIA plus community, rights of folks who are ensnared in the criminal legal system, kind of coming back to some of those First Amendment rights and those voting rights are really the key to accessing all of those other kind of statutory and state and federal constitutional rights.
Okay, thank you very much. And Fair Wisconsin, what are some of the ways in which the courts matter for a democracy in your view, and in particular in this particular race?
I don't even know where to begin with this one, but I mean, if you think about it, every major LGBTQ civil rights advancement over the past several decades at a federal level has been achieved through courts. Those are the most lasting and profound kind of legal transformations that we see in the LGBTQ civil rights movement. When you think about, marriage equality in 2015, or the more recent decision on employment discrimination protections on the basis of both sexual orientation and gender identity, people don't realize that courts matter until the decisions come down and their lives are affected, right? You don't realize that a court matters, the Wisconsin Supreme Court, for instance, until suddenly you can't return an absentee ballot to a drop box. You don't realize that a court matters until, now someone has the right to marry the person that they love because of a single vote of one justice on a Supreme Court. So when we go out into the community and, we have roundtables, town halls, and we do this kind of education and voter contact to talk about the stakes of this race, I like to begin by asking people what they care about, because like I said before, every single issue that anyone can possibly answer that question with is tied to the courts and the legal system. And like Amanda was saying, kind of like the bedrock of a democracy is the courts. It's voting rights. It's how you make your voice heard. So if Wisconsinites aren't showing up to decide the next justice of the Supreme Court, who the next justice will be for the next 10 years, then we're not showing up for our most basic civil rights, our most basic cornerstone of democracy. So Fair Wisconsin is getting out there. We're making sure that folks know the stakes specifically for LGBTQ Wisconsinites, because they're quite high, specifically in regard to issues like conversion therapy against minors, non-discrimination protections, like I said, on the basis of both sexual orientation and gender identity for our trans and gender nonconforming folks here in Wisconsin, but also just issues like fair maps, making sure that your vote matters, your voice matters, and you have real representation in Madison. Those all go hand in hand, and we're doing a lot of work to get the word out about how high stakes this race really is.
Okay, thank you very much. And I want to let people know again, this is put on by Community Shares of Wisconsin. It's part of the Big Share for this year, 2023. You can go to bigshare.org and make your donation to support all of the wonderful member organizations of Community Shares of Wisconsin. You can also watch this video and others part of this day-long video program, either on that website or on YouTube. And please send us your comments as well. Well, the time has gone very quickly, and so we're going to go around for one more round. That'll be a combination of closing comments, one more chance to give the information about your organization, how people can contact you and get the various resources, and also just briefly touch on these issues of access to the ballot in Wisconsin and some of the concerns over making sure that people know how to get out to vote and what they need when they arrive at the polls. And of course, I mentioned earlier the website myvote.wi.gov is the statewide information resource where you can see what's on your ballot, you can see what things are required, and you can see other information as well. But that's not the only place. All of these groups have information on their websites as well. And so we're going to go around for one last round, and you unfortunately only get about 60 seconds each. So we'll start with Debra from the League of Women Voters.
Sure. Well, thank you, Norm. I would just remind everybody on our website, the lwvwi.org, you will find our toolkits and resources, and that is an incredible wealth of information about how to, when to, where to vote, and what's on your ballot and why it's important and all of that. I just want to also, as people are preparing to vote for in April, Cely was talking about money in politics, especially money in our court race. And, I want people to be thinking about why money matters. Money was restricted for a long time in our elections, and it since Citizens United, it really isn't any longer. But why is it someone would give millions of dollars to a specific candidate? What is it that they think they will have? And my answer to that question is influence. And when a person, when a corporation, when an entity can have influence over our courts, we no longer have the impartial justice that Amanda was touting as a civics instructor, that she wants what every citizen should know. And it's just critically important that we connect those pieces. And make sure when you go to vote, I just have to say it as a League of Women Voters representative, bring your ID in Wisconsin or you're not going to be able to cast your ballot. So.
Okay, thank you very much. And Cely from the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign, how do people get in touch with you, and what do you want to close with?
Thanks, Norman. Yeah, I mean, Debra said it all. Unfortunately, we don't have an equal say because of all of the big and dark money that exists in politics right now. And our website actually links to the League of Women Voters toolkit to get out the vote. So if you click our website, you'll find the League of Women Voters toolkit to make sure you have everything you need. You have all the phone numbers you need to contact. I just want to say, if you believe in voting rights, if you believe in the right for people with uteruses to have access to accessible care, if you believe in fair maps, right? If that one hope of believing in the power of your single vote, right? Thinking about the 13 million undocumented people, including myself, that can't vote. The power of one vote is carrying those 13 million silent voices.
Okay, and that's wisdc.org, the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. Let's go to Amanda from the ACLU of Wisconsin.
Thank you so much. So again, ACLU-WI.org is our website. There are links to all of our social media handles on our front page, in addition to a landing page for all of our voting rights information and information about this election. I just think it's critical to make sure that everyone in your life that is making a voting plan as early as possible and knows their options of either voting on election day, voting by mail, or voting early through in-person absentee voting, and can check the website that was mentioned, myvote.wi.org, to find information from a local clerk's office on what those early voting dates, times, and locations may be. But as couldn't have said it better, that yes, all of those issues are critically on the ballot. Abortion, LGBTQ rights, voting rights, and how critical it is for everyone who is able and is not disenfranchised, which a lot of marginalized groups in Wisconsin, including those who are behind bars with a felony conviction are unable to vote, that it is critical that we all vote because their interests are absolutely going to be impacted by this election.
Okay, and that's myvote.wi.gov, G-O-V, because it's the state website, and on there it does list the last day to register, the last day to do early voting, and also the date of the election itself, which is Tuesday, April 4th, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Nick, some final words from you at Fair Wisconsin, in particular, talking about access to the polls, about your organization, and how people can get in touch with you.
Yes. So as everyone has already talked about, access to the ballot should not be difficult. It is for so many people, and unfortunately, that is in many cases by design. When you're discouraging people from participating in democracy, you're discouraging them from using their voice, and that kind of leads almost to like a self-perpetuating cycle where they feel disaffected and they feel powerless. And that is, like I said, by design in many cases. But I will say that LGBTQ people face unique challenges when it comes to accessing the ballot, whether it's a trans person who has, an identity document that hasn't been updated to reflect their gender identity post-transition, or even a gender non-conforming person whose photo on their ID doesn't seem to look like them in the eyes of a poll worker or a poll observer. These are all things that we have to be aware of, and it's something that we're talking to folks about, and we're making sure that all of our voters, whether they're LGBTQ or not, feel confident enough and are equipped with the information that they need to go into the polls and feel confident casting their ballot. And if they ever run into a problem or run into a challenge, they feel confident enough to navigate that and get it resolved, whether it's through, a hotline or a provisional ballot or anything like that. They feel confident going through all of that work to make their voice heard. So
Okay.
yeah, that is the last thing I'll say. Access to the ballot, it shouldn't be hard, but unfortunately it is. But the only way for us to overcome that and to build a stronger democracy for everyone is to push through. And all of these organizations, from the League to the ACLU, to Fair Wisconsin, to the Democracy Campaign, we're all putting in the work around the clock to make democracy fairer for everyone. And April 4th, I wish I could get that tattooed on my forehead, because I feel like that's all that's coming out of my mouth these days. But yes, April 4th, let's get it done.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thanks to all of our panelists, and we'll put those organizational website links in the YouTube description. So if you want to follow up on this and share the YouTube program with your friends, also please check out the bigshare.org for all the information about this day-long fundraising campaign put on by Community Shares of Wisconsin every year on the first Tuesday of the month of March. Thank you all very much for joining us today for this program. Again, my name is Norman Stockwell, publisher of the Progressive magazine here in Madison, Wisconsin. You can check out our print publication. You can check out our website at progressive.org for news about this election and all of the things happening around the country and around the world. Thank you all very much.